We're live finally. Wow. Telling you, it's going to drive me crazy trying to figure out how to get this computer to work at each time. Oh, now my live chat's gone. Every time there's something. Well, I write hi to him and stuff. Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, hello everyone. Glad you could join us. Have a lot going on right now at the church with rummage sale coming up tomorrow, and we've got it pretty much ready, and tireless volunteers who continue to help out. But if you're sitting at home and you have nothing to do tomorrow, we could always use the extra help. Obviously selling stuff and taking cash, but also we have a bake sale that needs to be run, and we need help with that. And so if you're one of those people who made things for the bake sale, bring it out, and we'll sell it, and the money will go towards the ministry center. And also be in prayer for Joan. We got some discouraging news today. Joan is being released from the place she was in last week, and they are starting her in a hospice at Nancy's house. And so be in prayer for her and Nancy as they continue to go through this. And sad times, but God is still in control, and we will still follow him. And other than that, things are kind of rolling along smoothly. And if there's anything we can do, please stop by, help us out. But we have been doing our study now. We're into the fourth week of our study. And last week, we had some internet problems. And it seems like I'm having internet problems every week. But last week, it stopped about 18 minutes in. So I redid the whole thing on the next day, on Thursday. And it's on there if you want to go back and watch it again. It's on there. I did kind of an abbreviated topic subject so that we could get the information so you could fill out the book that we have. If you don't have a book, please get one. I think it helps, it helps people who want to follow along type thing. I mean, I was reading through it this week, and I realized that probably most of these you probably could guess, but it's kind of nice to keep you involved in the program of what we're doing here. We're just reminded again as we see Christianity as a whole deteriorate in our culture, but also in the culture around the world, of why it's important we know what we believe and why we believe it. And you need to be willing and ready and able, which is what Timothy was told by Paul, to be able to defend your faith at any moment, any time. And so this is the opportunity. This is why we're doing this study, and it's kind of exciting for me. I love apologetics. It's one of my things, but I'm not a scientist. And I will say that when we get into the science of this, please understand that if you don't know what's going on, be assured either do I. But I do know this, that science is a major part of defending our faith, because this is the number one thing people will say to us constantly is your religion doesn't match up with science. And we would say that actually that's not true. And we will get into that as we dive into a creation apologetics tonight as to why that is actually true, that actually we actually have the stronger science, and now the world has a weaker science, and we'll point out why that is and how that is. And it's true, because I have debated with the top scientists in the globe today for the United States of America. We debated them, and we had them running around in circles. The reason is because they have no facts for what they believe. Everything is based on fiction. And we have unbelievable amount of facts and data that combine with us with what we have. And I was thinking about today as somebody was talking about the global warming issue we have going on. And no matter where you fall on this science of global warming, basically 30 years ago, they said we'd all be dead by now. And then almost every 10 years after that, they say 10 years, you're going to be dead. 5 years, you're going to be dead. Now they're saying we're all going to be dead. And the one that made me laugh the most was one of the politicians stood up and said that by 2,250 will all be dead. And I laughed because he's the only one that was right. Right? Everyone who was listening to this guy was going to be dead in 200 years from now. And I thought, well, finally, somebody's making sense, right? We will all be dead by then. But if you'll notice, our environment's never collapsed. It's never fallen apart. It's never killed us all. And yet it still continues to roll no matter what man does to it. And this guy was using an illustration in his global warming talk. And it actually made a bigger defense for God. And I don't think he realized that. But he said, isn't it ironic that trees produce what humans need to survive and plants produce what humans need to survive? And he said, it's almost as if they're working together. And I went, brilliant. You don't think about oxygen and carbon monoxide and all that stuff, carbon and all that stuff that's produced that actually helps us breathe. God actually designed the world so good that everything actually helps us live better on this planet. So the garden, all these things that produce oxygen for us, we breathe in carbon monoxide, breathe out oxygen, or breathe in oxygen, breathe out. I'm not even sure how the plants breathe out something and then we breathe it in and all that. Did I mention I'm not good with science? I think I did. But I can say this. It is so neat how the whole world works together so that man can function in this world. It's not just so the animals can survive, but everything is geared towards man's survival. We wouldn't survive if none of those things worked. God designed it perfectly. And that's the key word, is the designer mentality. The idea that all this stuff wasn't just random and couldn't have happened. But let's get into creation apologetics tonight. And they wanted me to have a bag of rags over in the corner. But it's hard to do that on YouTube and with people here. And plus somebody wanted all the rags, so we gave them all away. But in this lesson, we'll dig a little deeper into the evidence that we were created by God. One of the most amazing things about humans is how hard some of us will try to explain our existence apart from a creator. All kinds of books have been written by those who want to refute the teachings that were made by God. These people claim that creation is not true science. They'll argue that real science cannot allow the supernatural to be an explanation for anything. To them, everything has to be explained by natural causes. But there is something that is true about both the claim that everything has evolved through natural processes and the claim that we have been created by God. What is that? What is the true about both the claim for evolution and the claim for creation? Both the claim for evolution and the claim for creation are propositions that have to be taken by faith. Now, the argument is that's taken by faith and that's only faith. But listen, evolution and creation are both faith propositions. Neither is strictly scientific, since both creation and evolution are trying to explain what happened in the past. This is really a historical issue. None of us saw how the world was formed. We observed neither the creation nor the evolution of the horse, for instance. Since none of us were around to see either evolution or creation occur, we'll either have to take someone else's word for it or look for clues in the world around us. If we really were created by God, don't you think it makes sense that he would find some way to communicate to us the truth about our origin and our purpose for being here? It makes sense that if there is a God who made us, he would let us know about that. As you know, there is a book that claims to be written by God. In this book, God claims to have made the world and everything in it in 6 days. Sharing our faith would be much easier if people would simply accept the book's word for it, wouldn't it? In a future lesson, I plan to start talking about the evidence that the Bible was really written by God. If we can persuade people that the Bible is from God, then we can encourage them to trust what God said in his word about origins. While we are trying to convince non-Christians of the truth of the Bible, we also need to point them to the world around us and help them see that the biblical account of origin makes the most sense of the world. So to an extent, we can use science to make our case for a creator. We can't use the scientific method itself to determine the historical event of creation. You can't put the beginning of the universe into a test tube, but we can show people how the scientific evidence supports the biblical view of creation. It would be like looking at the fingerprint evidence at a crime scene to help determine which person committed the murder. We can look at scientific evidence like DNA to show that God committed the act of creation, not time and chance. One way to approach this is to look at what evolutionists or creation would expect to see if their belief were true. If evolution were true, what would we expect to see? And if creation were true, what would we expect to see now? One of the arguments that I see a lot is they would say, how come no evolution process is taking place currently anywhere in the world? If we all came from a piece of slime, and then from that slime we became something else, and we've been doing this for millions of years, how come man has never changed? And how come all of the evolutionary process are not in some current source form of change right now? And so it's a great argument. But what we're saying is once we know what each would predict, then we can observe the world and ask, does what we see around us best fit the expectations of evolution or creation? Or put it another way, which approach is most consistent with the evidence? So which approach is most consistent with the evidence? Since scientists have special tools for study, they can make even deeper observations than we can. What have they discovered? Do the results of their observation better fit with evolution or creation? What I want us to do today is give you more of the evidence that shows that the world around us fits the expectations or predictions of creation, not evolution. I want you to be able to share with your friends how the established laws of science and other data support the biblical record of creation more than the naturalistic evolution. In fact, I'll show you that evolution really is anti-scientific. I want us first to look at one of the most basic laws of science, the law of biogenesis. The law of biogenesis says this: 100 years ago or so, people used to believe that life could spontaneously generate. They thought that, for instance, if you left a box of rags in the corner long enough, it might spontaneously generate mice from the non-living rags. Do we think that a box of rags waiting long enough could spontaneously generate mice? In times past, some people actually thought that it could. But the famous scientist, Louis Pasteur, a Christian, by the way, and others did many experiments that disproved the idea that life could come from non-life. They recognized the law of biogenesis, and the law of biogenesis is this: life only comes from life. Now, look around in our culture. The law of biogenesis, life can only comes from life. Is there any instance that you know of where life came from not life? The answer is there is no evidence that that ever happened, ever. It doesn't happen now anywhere, and it never will happen. But evolutionists deny this basic law of science when they say that life had to come from non-life at least once. Though they see it as a problematic, most of them still think that life spontaneously arose out of some primordial soup. The evolutionist George Wald stated in the Scientific American, "One has only to contemplate the magnitude of this task to concede that the spontaneous generation of a living organism is impossible. Yet here we are. As a result, I believe of spontaneous generation." This is a Harvard University biochemist and Nobel laureate George Wald, 1954, in the Scientific American, basically saying this: it's impossible, but here we are. He's saying it happened, but there's no way it could happen. That's their leading scientists. Why do you think people like George Wald continue to believe in and even teach spontaneous generation, even when they know it is scientifically impossible? Actually, some atheistic evolutionists have accepted the fact that life could not and did not arise spontaneously on this planet. They come up with a non-theistic solution. For instance, a few evolutionists propose that life was transported from another planet to Earth. Francis Crick, famous as the co-discoverer of the structure of DNA, believed in this theory called panspermia. But what is the problem with Crick's theory? What does this ultimately mean? Evolution is not scientific when it comes to the law of biogenesis versus spontaneous generation. I want to just highlight the whole idea of the alien thing just for a second, because this is a big problem. There's a lot of people who believe in aliens from other planets. Listen to me very carefully. The Bible does not leave any room for creation to be done outside of the planet we live on, which is why they go to all these planets, and what do they look for? They look for life. What do they find? No life. They say, we think life used to exist here because there might have been water at one time. And they dig and they take rocks back to Earth and they examine those rocks and they say, we believe there might have been life on this planet. No one's ever seen it. No one's ever been part of it. But they believe wholeheartedly that it might have been there because it might have done this. It's not weird to think that some people actually have gotten so wrapped into the fact that evolution is no longer scientific that they have to come up with something else. And so they come up with aliens. Aliens are going to show up and they will have brought life here, started the evolutionary process on our planet, and then disappeared. And every once in a while, people say, well, they're coming back. Listen, we've been on this planet now, if you believe in young Earth, which I do, for about 10,000 years. In that 10,000 years, not a single human being has ever witnessed a living being from another planet. Now, yes, I know some people that have been drunk and other things have gone out and they trailer parks and other things. I know, no offense to those of us who live in trailer parks, but have claimed they saw unidentified flying objects. And yes, I wholeheartedly believe that they saw unidentified flying objects. But not a single credible person has ever been taken and probed in an alien ship and come back with any form of evidence that there is aliens that exist. I say all that to say that because people are coming up with theories that say that, but they have no evidence for it whatsoever. It's all based 100% on faith, no evidence. And you have to realize this, that scientists are telling us that us believing on faith is so wrong, but everything they believe is on faith. Everything. They have no proof for any of this stuff. They deny their own scientific laws, and yet they tell us to believe in God is ridiculous. But they're going to believe in a primordial soup that created life out of no life, which is impossible according to them. But they'll believe it wholeheartedly. Doesn't make sense, does it? Evolutionists contradict one of the most basic laws of science. Let's take a minute to look at this. The laws of probability. I want to spend most of our time today talking about the probability of life occurring by chance. Most evolutionists say that given enough time, even spontaneous generation can occur. This is what the evolutionist George Wald actually said, which we read. Time is in fact the hero of the plot. This is George Wald. The time with which we have to deal is the order of 2 billion years. What we regard as impossible on the basis of human experience is meaningless there. Given so much time, the impossible becomes possible. The impossible becomes possible, the possible probable, and the probable virtually certain. One has only to wait. Time itself performs the miracles. Do you see how the evolutionist views time as almost God? It is time that works the miracles. For an evolutionist, turning a frog into a prince is a fairy tale unless you add a few 100 million years. Then a frog turning into a prince is science. Time with chance is the key. But Christians believe that time was part of creation. Evolutionists are taking part of creation and making it God. We know, though, that time and chance do not have the ability to create all the complexities of the universe. I have a deck of cards here. I opened them up. I actually ripped them open earlier. And when you open a brand new deck of cards, oh man, 100th anniversary winning a hand of the century. I got like a lotto thing in here. But when you open up a deck of cards, they are in order. Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it starts with spades, and then it goes diamonds, and then it goes to clubs, and then ends with hearts. This deck does. And it just goes down. And then we have 2 jokers, which we can take out, and another card we can take out. Now, if evolution is true, I think I could take time shuffling. I will actually be able to get the cards back in the exact order they started in if I just have enough time. How many of you believe that if I shuffle and I just have enough time that the cards are going to go back into the order that I actually... So if I shuffle for 1 million years, do you really believe that they will all line back up 100% in order? I've shuffled 3 times. Are they getting closer to being together, or are they getting further apart from being together? Time does not make something like that get to this place. Now I'm going to really get the cards in order. Okay, let's talk about it. So why do we shuffle cards? We shuffle cards to make them more random, not less. Since we want the game to be fair, we mix up the cards as much as possible. The longer I shuffle, the more random it gets. The cards will not get more orderly by me spending more time shuffling. It is actually ludicrous to think that time can create order. The laws of probability can help us understand how ridiculous it is to think that time and chance created life. Here's a question for you. Is there enough time in the universe for chance to produce the intricate design we see around us? Let me repeat that. Is there enough time in the universe for chance to produce the intricate design we actually see around us? This design that we see is everywhere. It is so unique. Birds fly south. Everything comes together, the ecosystem. Salmon will go back upstream to the same location they were born and produce their offspring and then die. But they will travel miles upon miles upon miles. That's random? We believe that those kind of things just happened? That over millions of years, the whole world became intricate? It's interesting. A few moments of easy mathematics will help us answer the question. When we toss a coin, we expect it to land showing either heads or tails. We say from experience that the probability of the coin landing heads is 1/2. Or we could say tails has a 50% chance of showing up. We also know from experience that this does not mean when we throw a head first, the next throw will be a tail. It simply means that if we keep tossing coins long enough, then on average, half of the time the coin lands, it will show heads, and half of the time it will show tails. An interesting situation arises when 2 separate events occur at the same time. For example, tossing a coin and throwing a die. Maybe you'd call it a dice. But this is a plural for more than one die, if we ask. What is the chance of getting a head and throwing a 6 at the same time? So if I had a dice and a coin and I flipped it and threw the dice, what is the chance of getting a head and throwing a 6 at the same time? A simple look at all the possible results of tossing coins and throwing dice will show the answer. Since the coin has 2 sides and only 1 head, the possibility of a head is 1/2. Since the dice has 6 sides and only 1 face with 6 dots on it, the possibility of a 6 is 1 in 6. The only trouble is that half of the time the die lands showing a 6, the coin will show a tail. The other half of the time we throw a 6, the coin will show a head. So the probability of throwing the head and 6 together must be 1/2 of the 6's, or put mathematically, 1/2 times 1/6. This, of course, is 1/12. Statisticians. That's a fun word, isn't it? Statisticians. Okay. Okay. Is the S silent? Because that just got to be statisticians. All right. Have made this a rule called the multiplication rule of probability. Multiplication. Yes. Rule of probability. This states that the chance of several independent results occurring at once is found by multiplying the mathematical probabilities of obtaining the individual results. Let us extend this idea further. If I had a bucket with identical discs, like CD discs, each numbered from 1 to 10, the question is, can chance methods enable us to count from 1 to 10? If only one disc is to be selected from the bucket, noted and replaced, and we require disc 1 first, disc 2 second in the correct sequence from 1 to 10, what is the probability of selecting all 10 discs in order? Let's actually start with an easier question. What is the probability of selecting disc 1 with one attempt? The math is relatively easy. Since there is only one disc numbered 1, there can only be one chance in 10 of selecting it. After we replace the first disc, the chance of selecting the disc number 2 is the same, 1 of 10. In fact, every separately numbered disc has one chance in 10 of being selected. The probability of selecting the first one followed by the second one in correct order, though, must be 110 times 110 or 1 over 100. To select all 10 discs in the right order, the probability is 110 times 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 110 by 110, or 110 to the 10th power. This means that you would select the right order only once in 10 billion attempts. Chance requires 10 billion attempts on average to count from just 1 to 10. As you can see, chance is very efficient in producing design. To further illustrate that fact, I am now going to show you something fascinating. The question is, what is the expected probability for chance to spell the phrase, the theory of evolution? This phrase by chance would involve the random selection and sequencing of letters and spaces in the correct order, each letter from the alphabet plus one space, totaling 27 possible selections, has one chance in 27 of being selected. There are 20 letters plus 3 spaces in the phrase, the theory of evolution. Chance will on the average spell the theory of evolution correctly only 1 in 27 to the 23rd outcomes. This computes to one success in 8.300 quadrillion attempts. 8.3 times 10 to the 32nd power. Repeat that. This computes to one success in 8.300 quadrillion attempts. Suppose chance uses a machine which removes records and replaces all the letters randomly at the fantastic speed of 1 billion per microsecond, 1 quadrillion per second. On average, the phrase would happen once in 25 billion years by this random method. So, if as evolutionists would have us to believe the Earth has been in existence for approximately 5 billion years, then chance could take 5 times this time to spell out the theory of evolution, even at 1 billion attempts per microsecond, a phenomenal rate of experimentation. And this phrase is infinitely simpler than the smallest life form, and children of average intelligence could spell the theory of evolution in less than a minute. So you see, it takes intelligence to produce life. Time and chance could not have produced life. The laws of probability disprove that. The scientist mathematician William Dembski explains that if something happening has the probability of less than 1 in 10 to 150 power, then it could not have occurred. The 10 to 150 power number is based on 3 things: the number of atoms in the universe, 10 to the 80 power, the number of seconds that have passed, according to the evolutionist 10 to the 25th power, and the maximum number of changes our particle could go through, 10 to the 45th power alterations per second. So, according to Dembski, if anything has had less than 1 in 10 to the 150th power chance of happening, it just could not have happened by chance. This concept is part of Dembski's law of small probability. But what do evolutionists say themselves about the probability of life evolving? Evolutionist Julian Huxley said that the odds that the horse evolved was 1 chance in 10 to the 3 millionth power, but that it still happened thanks to natural selection or the survival of the fittest. However, natural selection is not a force with any real intelligence. It could not therefore be a major factor at all. Compare 10 to the 3 millionth power to 10 to the 150th power. According to Huxley's number, there is no way evolution could occur. Sir Fred Hoyle, the famous British mathematician and astronomer, said that the probability of life arising by chance was 1 in 10 to the 4,000th principle, and that this is like rolling a 6 on a die 5 million times in a row. Comparing 10 to the 4,000th power to 10 to 150 power, life could not have arisen by chance. Conclusion: evolution is not consistent with the laws of probability. Evolutionists are in denial when they refuse to face the impossible odds of evolution occurring and accept the implications of this impossibility. So based on what we have talked about so far, is evolution really scientific, and why not? Let's look at the last page of this, the application. Biogenesis and the laws of probability. We have seen that evolution does not follow these laws of science. The next time we meet, we will talk about the law of thermodynamics, the laws of genetics, the fossil record, and the age of the earth. So that is where we come to tonight. If you're not a mathematician, which, by the way, I'm not a mathematician either, but it does floor me and blow my mind. If you are a mathematician, then you appreciated a lot of what we talked about tonight. If you're not a mathematician, stay along, because what it means is that brilliant people, the most brilliant mathematicians of our time, are coming up that evolution does not work. And these are the people that are looking at it, and now they have to try to come up with another thing. Instead of just saying God created, they have to come up with something, because each time it proves that science is not the answer to where creation began or where all living things came from. We'll get in deeper. I hope you appreciate this, because it's fun to get into it, to see that a lot of times we've been sitting in classes and people have been teaching evolution, and they're teaching something that is clearly wrong. And yet, if you question them, you're the idiot. And if you challenge them, they immediately go back to mocking our God or mocking the possibilities. But what we're going to see through this study is, at the end of the day, we have the evidence for creation. And we have everything we need to believe wholeheartedly in what we believe. And what they believe is truly based on faith with no evidence. But we have the evidence as we dive deeper. We'll be on Sunday wrapping up Ephesians chapter 6. Hopefully we'll see you there. I'm encouraging everyone to come out now, to come out of your hiding, your caves and other things, and come back to church. We need a church who gets back to doing what the church was meant to do. So you can come back. You can do it safely. You've been doing it for months safely. And now even the scientists are telling you to come back to church. So come back to church. All right? Hopefully we'll see you on Sunday. We can celebrate seeing you. If not, we'll see you next week on Wednesday night live. I'm going to pray with you, and then we'll talk here in the classroom. Lord, we thank you for showing us evidences, helping us see through the lies and to see the truth. Because when we can stand on truth, we can defend what we believe. Lord, we thank you for it. Keep everyone safe. Help the rummage sale to go well and everything to go smoothly. In Jesus' name, amen. Have a good night, everyone.